Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Always Compete Seahawks podcast. Real quick, before we get started, 95% of you who watch these videos on YouTube are not subscribed. So go ahead and feel free to, if you enjoy our content and you want to tune in, click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to ensure that you do not miss out on great Seahawks content. We're getting into that point where training camp is going to get started. Do not want to miss out on that. So go ahead, click that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and to ensure that you don't miss out on amazing Seahawks content that we got going around here. But now to the main topic of the video. We are post-draft, and with the Seahawks only having 3 picks in this year's draft, we kind of safely assumed that the Seahawks would likely be very heavy players in the undrafted free agent market. You know, just because of the fact that they only had 3 picks, it was looking like they'd have to make a lot of their potentially big-time moves in the free agent market. And they made a lot of moves. 11 players got signed as undrafted free agents, and we are going to be breaking those players down today. The Seahawks were so in on undrafted free agents that even John Schneider and Pete Carroll held their press conference early so that they could have time at the end of the draft to go ahead and call up some UDFAs and talk to them. So real quick, Mike, just looking at this overall class without naming any names, just what are your kind of thoughts on this UDFA class?
I think we're going to have some real contributors. I really do think that, in the course of the John Schneider and Pete Carroll tenure, they've done a really good job with those undrafted free agents, making sure to get some really good production. Obviously, the golden boy in that aspect would be Doug Baldwin. I think we have a guy or maybe a couple guys who could be kind of that Doug Baldwin type that could be very, very good players that unfortunately went undrafted for one reason or another. But I think I really do like this class, and I see a lot of contributors right off the bat right here.
Yeah, I really think that this has a lot of potential to really have some players who later in their careers could be legitimate players for the Seahawks for a long time. I mean, I pulled it up. I'm looking at some of these undrafted Seahawks who have played for the Seahawks before. We have guys like Jordan Babineau, Doug Baldwin, as you previously mentioned, John Kitna, Joe Nash, Jim Zorn, even guys like Max Strong and Dave Craig were all undrafted.
Wow.
So the Seahawks have had some names, including 3 starting quarterbacks that were all undrafted. So Obviously the Seahawks have a good history of pulling in these undrafted free agents. And now we are going to dissect this year's class, beginning with potentially the most intriguing player in this year's free agent class. We're going to have Tamorrion Terry, the wide receiver, formerly of Florida State. Kind of surprised that he didn't get drafted. He did kind of have a junior season slump. But in 2019, this guy was a total machine. He had 1,100 yards. And I feel like the thing that really jumps off the page immediately is his build. You kind of look at the build, 6'3", 207. This is a big, big man who ran a 4.45 and had 1,100 yards. So he's not like he's some scrub who's just big. He had 1,100 yards in his sophomore year when he actually had a quarterback. So I think Tamorrion Terry has a legitimate chance of being a guy who makes the 53, not even as like a practice squad guy, just a guy who like legitimately plays himself onto the team through the camps and through preseason. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on this first pickup?
Well, I mean, I think, he's got really good size. He's fast. 4.45 speed is really, really good. He's built pretty big. He kind of is like a DK Metcalf type build, big, strong, fast. He struggled a good amount this past season with drops, and like you said, his production kind of took a hit. So I don't know what we're getting necessarily, but I think when you take his frame and his just raw athletic ability and that speed, and you give him a real quarterback like Russell Wilson, I think that if he's going to be something great, it's going to be with us, obviously. I think he's in a great situation for himself. And I think, he's not going to have to come in and be one of our better receivers. So if he could just make a couple plays here and there, I think it's a good pickup, honestly.
Yeah, I really like the pickup. This was one of the prized UDFAs of the entire draft. So the fact that we got him is very good. I mean, this guy's a legitimate chance of making the team. We have 4 receivers who I think are guaranteed to make the team. DK, Tyler, Dwayne, and Freddie Swain. Those are the 4 guys who are like, yeah, you can bet on them being on the team pretty comfortably.
Right.
That 5th spot is a requirement, and it's open. And then you could also have 6 guys. And Seahawks got a couple more wide receivers in this UDFA class, so we might see a couple of UDFAs making this Seahawks team. We're going to move on to our second pickup, Brian Mills, the corner out of North Carolina Central. This is a guy who, in private, I actually mocked a lot to the Seahawks at 250 before we traded that pick.
Mm-hmm.
I mocked him a lot to the Seahawks because I just thought that his build was ideal for the Seahawks to have. He's a big guy. He's, I believe, 6'2", was okay at the Senior Bowl, and he's not very technically sound. However, I just think the speed and the size aspect of this guy is something that is worth taking a true swing on. So, Mike, when you look at the signing, do you kind of see it more as like, oh, the Seahawks really like him, and I think he could potentially make the team, or do you see it as like a practice squad developmental guy?
I think that he'll definitely start off on the practice squad. I think he's really raw. He's really skinny. He's not strong enough, I don't think, to compete for an NFL roster just yet. But, I mean, you could definitely get stronger. He could definitely, hit the weight room when he gets up to Seattle. He's up with the big boys. But, this is the type of corner that Pete Carroll just has loved. Those tall guys with good ball skills. I'm not saying he is a Richard Sherman, but that's, the reason we brought along guys like Richard Sherman, tall guys with good ball skills. Played against the FCS, so not great competition, but he did have 5 interceptions, which is very good. Really struggled from what I heard at the Senior Bowl. Wasn't very technically sound at all. So I don't think that this guy reminds me a good amount, just in kind of the way he's built and his strengths and weaknesses, of a Levi Wallace when he came out of Alabama. Good ball skills, but was real tall, skinny. I mean, he would just get blocked out of the galaxy, right? Especially by a guy like DK Metcalf. I mean, I'd pay to see that matchup in practice. DK just pancaking the crap out of him. So I say this guy starts off on the practice squad. I think maybe late in the year, if we have some corner injuries, hopefully not, but if we do have some corner injuries, I could definitely see him being brought up. But I think priority number 1 is for him to hit the weight room and fix some of his technique.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with him coming from that smaller school, it's definitely a requirement because you don't get that same amount of coaching that you would get at a Division I school. And that's not a knock on FCS schools. It's just kind of how it works. It tends that the better coaches go to the better schools. So, obviously he's not going to be totally technically sound. You said he reminds you of Levi Wallace. I watch and look at him, and I watch his build, and I really see Trey Flowers. That's what I see, honestly. He's already on the team. He's like long, skinny. His on Twitter is literally @slim7. Like this, like literally slim guy who has solid ball skills and can play the football, but is just not very technically sound, and that Senior Bowl proved that he's not ready for that top level of competition, which is probably why he went undrafted. So this could be a big swing, and I have a gut feeling that like this pickup could either be like in 1 to 2 years, this pickup could like really be like, wow, the Seahawks really got a steal there. He's a solid guy who can play 4th corner for us. Or it could be like, wow, this guy sucks in the preseason and he's off the team in a year and he never plays football again. It could be like one of those 2 things.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see how it works out with Brian Mills.
And I think that's, to your point, really quick before you go on to the next guy, I think that's the point that what Seahawks are trying to do is we only have 3 picks, like you mentioned, and so we're trying to get guys with potential. So if these guys don't make the roster, well, they're undrafted. Like, who really cares, right? I think we'd rather waste an undrafted guy than waste one of our draft picks on one of those kind of boom or bust type players you were just describing. So, I mean, pick up 20 of those guys, and if 2 or 3 of them are really good players, then you got yourself 2 or 3 steals, which is really good from those UDFAs.
For sure. And we were kind of talking about question marks, right? This guy is a huge question mark. Pierre-Olivier Lestage. I probably butchered that.
It's French, I believe. It
French. Is French. He's from the University of Montreal, which is a French-speaking city. And this guy's is a center, 6'3", 305, so pretty good size. And from what I heard, he was by far the top recruited pickup in Canada. Like, this was like the guy who you wanted in Canada. There were several teams calling him, and reportedly the Seahawks were the team that won out. And from what I'm hearing, this guy is what at least in Canada was a pancake machine. This guy was, I mean, I heard that this dude was dominant in Canada at the University of Montreal. Obviously, a much lower level of competition,
Right.
maybe even a lower level of competition than FCS football. You could debate because, so
Yeah.
it's once again, it's a big swing. And I mean, I've heard that this guy has a lot of things to like about him. Like, just reading about him here, obviously it talks about a big guy, 6'3", 305, and it says that he plays with a mean streak. That's the quote, a mean streak. This guy is aggressive. He'll hit you in the mouth hard, and he will make sure that he will try to knock you down. I anticipate this guy maybe competing for a backup center role with Kyle Fuller on the team, and we're going to see how it goes. So, Mike, I mean, this guy's kind of an unknown, but overall from the description, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. When I heard that we picked him up, I had no idea who he was. This is one of the few guys that I hadn't heard of, and I had to do research post him signing, whereas most of these guys, I kind of had a general idea of what was going on. But listen, he's 6'3", 305. He's a big dude. He just absolutely dominated in Canada. So obviously, like, the level of competition is concerning, right? The level from college in Canada to the NFL is massive. But I think that he's done well enough in Canada that he's got raw attributes. Like you mentioned, he plays with a mean streak. I love it when linemen play mean. He's aggressive, finishes blocks from what I've heard. It's very, I think it's very hard to scout him because, like I said, going against less competition. So it's not as clear to what kind of a player he is. But I think this is definitely a good pickup. He was recruited by a lot of people to go sign. I'm sure the CFL is crying when we signed him, which you love to see it. But I think that this is a guy that could definitely compete for the backup spot. I don't think that he's going to make the active roster right away. But as I mentioned with the previous player, we had a bunch of offensive line injuries last year. At one point, we had Damian Lewis at center. So should that happen again this year, I could definitely see him being on the active roster. And though I wouldn't want this to happen, he could potentially even start a couple games at center if we really get messed up in the interior O-line.
Yeah. That's really all you could say. I mean, I definitely like the size at interior. 6'3" is a rare size for an interior lineman. Most of the time they're at that smaller kind of setup. They're more at that, 6'1", 6'2" kind of range. This guy's 6'3". He's a big man playing in the middle. I think he definitely has a chance to actively compete right out of the gate for that backup center job, especially with the question marks kind of surrounding it. So very interesting signing there. We're going to see how it works. Well, now we talked about level of competition. This is a big jump up in level of competition. We go from a Canadian college football player to the SEC with the Seahawks signing guard Jared Hocker out of Texas A&M, 6'6", 327 pounds with 33.25-inch arms. What do you think?
Well, I think the first thing that jumps off is massive human being. 3 words that you love to hear with offensive linemen. 6'6", 327 pounds. That's absolutely massive. That's like 2 Russell Wilsons. So I'm sure that's great. He's listed as a guard. He's really got the size of like a tackle.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was wondering. I was wondering, especially with his arm length, 33-inch arms are hard to find. Most tackle, they kind of look like that 36 to 33 range. This guy really has that size, and that's kind of what I was wondering right out of the gate. So
I would bet if he wants to seriously compete for a roster spot or playing time, I'm gonna guess that he's gonna move to tackle just because that 6'6", 33-inch arms frame is really good for a tackle. Guard, I wouldn't say it's bad, but I don't think it's as valuable, as it would be for a tackle. But I mean, massive human being, played in the SEC, played very well. Again, you mentioned the level of competition. That's the highest you can get is playing in the SEC right there. So really, really love those two things. They jump off right away. I've heard he's not a phenomenal athlete, which is why he played guard, which, again, is a little bit weird because you want him to go to tackle, but if he's not athletic enough, obviously you don't want him going against guys like Nick Bosa, who are just freaks of nature out there. So I would either put him at guard or I would try to get him down to like 310 and maybe move him at tackle. That's my guess. I'm going to guess that they try to get him in, have him lose a little bit of weight and put him at tackle. But yeah, I don't think this guy makes the roster, honestly, right off the bat. But I think, again, you can't have too much offensive line depth. It never hurts. And to have a guy who's 6'6", 327 really would make you feel comfortable if you're a quarterback, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing that kind of supports him moving over to tackle is the fact that we kind of have our two long-term guard solutions. Gabe Jackson, he got his contract extended by essentially 1 year. He got his whole contract redone and it added a year to his contract. So he's under contract for 3 years. So is Damian Lewis. I don't see, but then you look at tackles. Dwayne Brown and Braden Shell are both on last year of their deals. I anticipate Dwayne Brown likely retiring. And
Yeah.
I anticipate the Seahawks letting Braden Shell walk. So it gets to that point where, like, do you think this guy has long-term tackle potential? And I guess we'll just have to wait and see with how the Seahawks use him. So that's going to be real interesting pickup here. Running back here, BJ Emmons out of Florida Atlantic. This guy was a 5-star recruit who went to Alabama at the beginning of his career, but injuries held him back. He had to transfer, and he's transferred multiple times, and he transferred to FAU to finish his collegiate career. 5-year player, 5'11", 215, quote, battering ram with quality speed and athletic traits. What do you think?
I'm going to be honest here. Out of all of the guys that we're going to talk about, there's a couple that I think are really going to be diamonds in the rough that I would put my money on being truly special players if they could kind of put it together. I think this guy's going to be a truly, truly special player. Like you said, recruited by Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban knows running backs. You look at the running backs Alabama's had: Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Najee Harris, Trent Richardson. He was good in Alabama, I promise. Eddie Lacy. Like, all of those guys have just been studs. Basically, if you go to Alabama, you're a stud running back. I mean, Nick Saban obviously saw something great in him. And I am not one to disagree with Nick Saban, for one. But the thing that really held him back was the injuries. Obviously, that's a thing that a lot of people are held back by, especially when you get to the undrafted players. It's injury problems that really hold them back from, getting to their true potential. So I feel like if he can get his injuries in check and he could stay healthy, I think this guy could be really, really good. 5'11", 215, like you said, good speed, runs like a battering ram. That's kind of what the Seahawks are built around. Marshawn Lynch was kind of that also running back with really good speed, but could also run you over every chance he got. I really do think that this guy could make the roster. I don't know if he makes it right off the bat, but a couple years ago, I mean, we had to literally lure Marshawn Lynch out of retirement to start in our playoff game. So I think, again, depth doesn't hurt. And if we want to have him as the 3 or the 4 running back, that's all fine by me. I am really, really happy with BJ Emmons.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of talk about the potential. Automatic comparison that I see just from that description alone: 5'11", 215, battering ram with quality speed, but has injury problems. Do I hear like Rashad Penny a little bit? Is that just kind of what I hear? I mean, because Rashad Penny is kind of like that. You could compare it to Chris Carson, but Chris Carson lacks something called quality speed. No hate to Chris, but Chris is not a fast guy by definition.
Chris, you slow, my man.
Yeah, slow. He ran like a 4.55. Not great for a running back. But Emmons is fast, and I mean, Rashad Penny can do that. Rashad Penny can put his head down. I mean, there's runs like against Philadelphia where he had that 55-yard touchdown run, and I think it was Ronald Darby came up to tackle him, and he threw him off with an elbow. Like, he literally shoved him off.
That was one of the sexiest. I remember being like, this guy is good, and then he like broke his ankle the next week.
They tore his ACL like 3 weeks later.
I was like, oh, man.
Heartbreak. And we just didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so even more pain, because I kind of like Rashad, but
well, this is like a prove it year for him. So if he balls out this year, we'll sign him back. But
yeah,
Anyway,
For sure.
back to BJ. Wait. Back to
Pause.
Emmons. Back to Emmons.
Yeah. But,
Oops.
I mean, obviously, there is major potential in this guy. 5
Mhm.
stars, recruited to Bama. You can take a flyer on that all you want. I think that's really what you got to focus on here. The potential over necessarily the immediate player that you're going to be getting in the current